use some of the same worksheets and the things that we develop for Agile that we have for CMMI as well. And specifically on MVC, MVC2 is in Visual Studio 2010. So I know as we develop more extensions with web and using MVC, I think the framework exists, the project system exists, the ability to F5 and all that kind of stuff is all in Visual Studio 2010. So it's a pretty mainstream part of the product, so you should be able to use it.
We have a session today for MVC2. You can attend it, and if you have questions, you can ask the speaker in this session.
There's more details there. Did you have a question as well, or? No? Same one? Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
What are the kinds of UML diagrams you can generate other than sequence diagrams?
So I think if I go into some more detail, I might show you some more UML later, but we built 5 UML diagrams in 2010, class, component, sequence, activity, and use case. And the reason we built those 5 is because in my understanding and in our understanding of it, most people tend to use those 5 more than the others. We are going to build the others eventually. So the one that's in Visual Studio 2010, the one that out of the box lets you generate it, the 2 generation things we have is the graph, which is not UML, and the sequence diagram, which is. Like I was really talking about extensions before, where we're building something. We're actually working on, before I flew out, we finished development on what we call a Visual Studio feature pack. We've really added some new, we're addressing some of the gaps that we had in the product. So one of those gaps is the ability to generate class diagrams as well from your source. So with the product, just the box, you will get generation of sequence diagrams. When the feature pack comes out, I don't have a date yet, but when it comes out, it's pretty soon, you'll have generation of class diagrams as well. And one of the really key focuses I think you'll get from the feature pack is the extensibility. So the whole UML model, our API is fully UML2 compliant, is extensible. You can add, I know a lot of people that have been adding their own generation capabilities for other things, like for use cases out of TFS work items. And kind of integrating back and forth using use case diagrams and doing sort of business process modeling and that kind of stuff with some of those. So the 2 generation ones are sequence and class for now. Mm-hmm. Yeah?
You show first demo was on the Architecture Explorer.
Yes.
It is the part of team
VS Ultimate.
Foundation server.
It's now part of VS Ultimate.
There's no need for the foundation server to see for Architecture Explorer.
No, because the Architecture Explorer sits in the client. Yeah, so if you have VS Ultimate, you get the Architecture Explorer and all the graph stuff I talked about. You don't have to have TFS to have the Architecture Explorer. So of course, a lot of the features that work well with the integration, you would need TFS for.
And for the source control version management.
Yes.
We should need for the foundation server.
Correct. If you want, source control management, you need TFS.
Yes. Actually, we are going for, currently we are using the Visual Source 6.
Yeah.
And we are going to move on to the foundation server.
Yeah.
So should we just need for some major frameworks, Visual Studio T2 and T solution and the foundation server?
So, well, I think if you're...
What are the steps to move from Visual Studio 6 to foundation server?
So I think the steps to move from source safe to TFS from a source control aspect are probably, it'll take some time, but it's probably not that hard because most source control systems work in a very similar fashion. So I think it's probably a little bit of learning on some of the commands, but there's a lot of really cool integration with VS for checking in and branching and merging and all that kind of stuff. So I think that part of it really shouldn't be all that complicated with you being able to check it in. I think maybe SourceSafe had some things around exclusive locks and things like that that have kind of gotten away from TFS. I think most of the things with TFS, and I'm sure some of these guys over here locally can help you with some of that installation, is installing it and getting it running properly and all that kind of stuff. But once you have that, moving the source code base from, it depends on how big it is, but moving it from SourceSafe to TFS, I don't foresee as being too much of a problem.
Before the purchase point of view, is there any trial version or something just for the testing for the foundation server? is there, or we should?
So as we get into more MSDN types questions and stuff, I don't know if you guys want to take some of these things. I mean, I can, but I'm not entirely sure what the offers and the local things are. I know there were a lot of, there are trial versions for all of these things. Yeah, you want to just use mine?
I'm loud. So, just a question for the VB6 components. Are you planning to keep them or change the project? Change the project. And you're going to do it like, is it huge, complex projects, mission critical, or just simple departmental?
No, not complex, like with respect to medical or but
okay.
immediate.
Are you planning, like, I'm trying to understand the shifting phase. Is it shifting on the source code itself?
Yes.
Or on the ALM side, like VSS, source safe versus
Both
team
sides.
system?
For the development, currently we are using Visual Studio 2005.
Okay.
And one for the source control management control, that is we are using VSS 6.
Sure.
So we are going to move on the Visual Studio 2008 and into foundation server.
Okay.
For the, especially for the control, the source code.
Yeah.
Okay. So from the coding side, let's say as from development standpoint, shifting an old source code to a new source code,
It's not a problem.
it's an upgrade, right? I mean, you do the changes. The wizards might help you in the tool, the IDE, and all of that stuff, right? And this you can think about it as an enhancement to an existing code you have, right? Now this comes the part now where the migration from VSS to TFS. This is the issue that you need to consider, and that's what I think you were referring to, Suhail, in the process. So you need to consider two things here, like the old code base with the new code base shift. If you want to keep something, let's say you go in parallel, where you have, as you go and make the builds, you need to compile all these codes in the old tool with the new tool, or like the old, like let's say Visual Studio 6 and the new Visual Studio, and getting into all this complex .NET versus non-.NET old legacy code that you have. There are tools that might help you. We have, for example, I can give you a tool off my head, OpenMake, right? OpenMake integrates with TFS. And OpenMake integrates all kinds of, even if you have non-Microsoft tools. You can go and create the builds for those and build it as you go as part of the TFS. When you migrate it, while you're doing the shift in the code base, you're doing the builds actually from the old source and the new source. I'm just giving you an example of things that can help you.
I think unless you're using something really specific to VSS, which you probably aren't, it's probably just using a source control system. Unless you're using something very specific, there's really not much of a challenge moving that code base to TFS. I mean, it's just learning the new commands, nothing. There's not really a problem there. I think if it's more of a process question to you and your exact situation of what might be legacy, what needs to be where it is, and all that kind of stuff. But just from a very simple, what does it take to upgrade something from inside SourceSafe to TFS? Not much at all. You set it up
We
and
have
you
applications ready, we have steps ready for that.
Foundation server is a trial version or something like.
Well, actually, you can see the release candidate of Visual Studio is available. You can download it. And even we have, better yet, I can tell you, we have a training kit for Visual Studio 2010. That includes a link to the release candidate. We can provide it to you. It's downloadable.
I think even it depends on what, there's a lot of MSDN offers, and it depends on all the kinds of things you have. I think we have a lot of really great offers for learning and trials and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think you should have a problem finding a way to do it.
I can forward you the training kit. The training kit link is just a download. Even it has samples and demos for all the new features, ALM and not ALM. And it has a link to the new Visual Studio release candidate. Of course, it's time-bound, right? I mean, you're not going to use it forever, right?
One of the things I can tell you is I've been installing TFS for a long time to test stuff, and the installation of TFS now is piece of cake. It's so easy compared to what it used to be. It used to be you had to go through a lot, but the current TFS installation, they actually spent a lot of time making that easy. And so especially if, certainly if you're in production, but if you're trying to